The movie begins at a party with a married couple dancing together. We are introduced to the husband, Matt, who works as a lawyer, and his wife, Katrina, who is a businesswoman. They keep talking, and Matt asks her to cancel her trip and stay with him. She replies that she has very important work in Los Angeles and must go to finish it. While they are dancing, their friend David joins them, teasingly telling Matt that Katrina only likes to dance with him. He then takes her to dance and thanks her for inviting him to the party. From their conversation, we learn that the three of them were close friends in college, and that David used to love Katrina, but she chose to marry Matt. After a while, Matt comes back to dance with Katrina, while David leaves to answer a phone call. When he returns, he tells them that Kyle Medford has been killed in his home. David immediately leaves the party and rushes to Kyle's house, where he discovers that Kyle was brutally murdered. David insists that whoever killed him did it out of revenge and anger, not by accident. While investigating the crime scene, they find an ancient axe covered in blood, which they identify as the murder weapon and take it for fingerprint analysis. David continues searching the house and finds a small silver box containing hair. The writing on it is in Chinese, so he decides to keep it in case it leads to something. Later, he meets a friend and together they go to Chinatown, where they meet a man named Mr. Wong. They ask if the box was ever sold in his shop. Wong tells them that it is made of very rare fine silver and was indeed sold there, but he doesn't remember who bought it. He explains that such gifts are usually purchased by a wealthy man for a woman he loves. When they ask him about the Chinese word inscribed on the box, he says it means, Jade, the title of the movie. Neither of them knows its significance. Soon after, Katrina travels to Los Angeles for work. On the way, she is holding a newspaper reporting Kyle's death, and she seems very interested in knowing more about him. Meanwhile, Matt and David attend Kyle's funeral since he was a mutual friend. There, Matt tells David this is the opportunity of a lifetime and insists they must learn everything about the case, as it could help Matt get promoted to district attorney. David, however, replies that he seeks the truth not for a position but to deliver justice and catch the killer. The next day at the office, the police bring in Kyle's belongings. Everyone is shocked to discover photographs of the California governor in a compromising situation with a woman. They all suspect these photos might be the reason Kyle was killed. David takes the photos to the governor's office and asks to speak to him privately. When the governor sees them, he explodes, saying Kyle was a despicable blackmailer who ran a prostitution ring for high-profile figures, recording them to extort them later. He admits to having made mistakes, like any man with weaknesses, but warns David that if he speaks of this to anyone, he will ruin him and make sure he never works in California again. Afterward, David returns to the office where his boss Cliff confronts him, saying the governor called, upset about his actions. David insists that this is part of his job and he isn't afraid, but Cliff tells him he's off the case. David refuses, and after some negotiation, Cliff agrees to let him stay, but only if he doesn't overstep again. David then consults another investigator, Vasco, about the woman in the governor's photos. Vasco reveals she is a call girl named Patrice, who had previously been in prison. He also informs David that Kyle owned a house on a remote island, where all the illicit activities took place. David, Vasco, and another detective, Henderson, go to the house and find it filled with hidden cameras, used to film politicians with prostitutes for blackmail. Searching the fireplace, they discover a burnt videotape, which Vasco says the lab can partially recover. They then question Kyle's neighbor, showing him photos of various women, and he identifies Patrice as someone he had seen at Kyle's house. David and Vasco track Patrice to a beauty salon in Chinatown. When she sees them, she panics and runs, but David chases her down and arrests her. At the police station, she threatens to call her lawyer and screams at them. David and Henderson confront her, saying she was seen leaving Kyle's house multiple times and photographed with the governor. If the scandal breaks, she will be the scapegoat. Terrified, Patrice confesses everything. She explains that she met Kyle at a party and, after learning she was a prostitute, he offered to manage her and pay her far more than before. He often mentioned a mysterious woman named Jade. Patrice never met her face to face, but once saw her from behind leaving the house. She often heard the name, and all the politicians, including the governor, requested her specifically. Patrice knew she was being filmed but couldn't speak out. Kyle wouldn't have allowed it, nor would the powerful men involved. After the interrogation, David leaves but is nearly killed when his car brakes fail, causing a massive accident that lands him in the hospital. It becomes clear someone tampered with his car to silence him. Cliff urges him to drop the case, but David refuses, vowing to dig deeper. Back at the office, one of his assistants informs him that a fingerprint lifted from the murder weapon, the bloodied axe, belongs to Katrina Maxwell. David is stunned. To confirm, he revisits Kyle's island neighbor and shows him more photos of women. The neighbor points at Katrina, saying he saw her there several times. David immediately confronts Matt, telling him Katrina's fingerprints were on the axe. Matt insists it's explainable. Katrina had been to Kyle's house because they were working together on acquiring a painting by Matisse for their new museum. He argues that this is no proof. David replies that regardless of the explanation, he must do his duty and question her. Out of respect for their old friendship, he agrees not to summon her to the station but instead to interrogate her at home. That same night, Detective Vasco, along with David and Henderson, went to meet Matt and Katrina at their home. Katrina explained that she had indeed visited Kyle one day before his death, and that while they were discussing business, he showed her his new axe, which he said came from an African tribe. He asked her to hold it so she could feel how heavy it was. Vasco asked if she had touched anything else in the house. She said she couldn't remember, but she recalled seeing another African mask and wasn't sure whether she had touched it or not. The detectives kept pressing her, asking if anyone could corroborate her story, if she had seen Matt when she returned home, or if he wasn't there. Then David asked her if she had any kind of relationship with Kyle. This question enraged both Katrina and Matt, and they told the detectives the questioning was over. The investigators returned to the police department, where they received shocking news. The forensic lab had managed to recover part of the burnt tape found in Kyle's island house. When they played it, the video clearly showed Kyle and Katrina together. David was deeply shaken, realizing Katrina was involved. Before he could act, his assistant informed him that Patrice had called, asking to meet him at a cafe, and gave him the address. David agreed immediately, certain she had new information. He waited at the cafe and saw her arrive, but before she could come inside, as she crossed the street, a car ran her over, then reversed and crushed her again to ensure her death, before fleeing. David jumped up, called for help, and chased after the car. The pursuit was chaotic, especially with a Chinese festival crowding the streets, but he pressed on at full speed until the road cleared. Suddenly, the car vanished, only to reappear from an old warehouse, ramming him from the side and knocking his car into the water, before speeding off. Later, David went to the morgue where he met Henderson, who scolded him for ignoring his earlier warnings to stay out of this case. Their argument escalated, with David accusing Henderson of secretly working for the governor. The two nearly fought before Vasco intervened. In a subsequent meeting with the other investigators, Henderson strongly insisted that Katrina killed Kyle. She had no alibi, her fingerprints were on the axe, and now there was video evidence after she denied having any relationship with Kyle. He also revealed that Katrina owned 3 cars, one of which matched the model used in Patrice's hit-and-run. Based on this, Cliff decided Katrina should be summoned for questioning. Katrina arrived with Matt, acting both as her husband and her lawyer. They showed her the incriminating video with Kyle. Matt was devastated, unable to believe what he saw, and argued that it wasn't Katrina but someone who resembled her. Henderson pressed on, where was she the night before? Where was her black car? What condition was it in? Finally, Katrina admitted she was the woman in the video, claiming it was just a fling but denying any involvement in Kyle's murder. When asked about Jade, she insisted she didn't know who that was, saying she had only been to Kyle's house once. She told them to ask the woman who supposedly saw her there. They replied that the witness was dead, and that Katrina herself was suspected of killing her. At that point, Matt stood up angrily, telling them he was leaving with his wife. If they had real evidence, they could bring formal charges, but they would not tolerate another friendly chat. Back at home, Matt erupted in fury at Katrina, accusing her of betrayal. She countered that he had cheated on her multiple times, at the office, sometimes even at home, and she had evidence. She said she had stayed silent all this time but if he wanted a divorce, he was free to do so. Later, as David sat at home reflecting, Katrina suddenly showed up. She told him she knew he still loved her and couldn't get her out of his mind. When he asked why she cheated on Matt, she admitted it was a mistake she never expected to spiral this far. She swore she had nothing to do with Kyle's murder and begged David to be close to her again, to forget everything. David rejected her advances, and she stormed out. Moments later, David received a call. Cliff had been murdered in his apartment. Rushing over, he found Cliff brutally killed. His assistant told him that everyone connected to Patrice was being silenced, likely to protect the governor. David feared Katrina would be next. He rushed to warn her, but at his home he was shocked to find Matt waiting with a gun, demanding to know if anything had happened between David and Katrina. David denied it, insisting this was not the time. Katrina's life was in danger. Meanwhile, Katrina returned home, calling out for her maid but finding her dead. Hearing noises, she fled to hide, trying to call Matt. At that moment, Matt and David were speeding toward the house. They arrived just in time to find Katrina bound by an intruder attempting to kill her. A violent shootout erupted between Matt, David, and the attacker. To their shock, the assailant was Henderson. A fierce fight broke out, ending with Matt shooting Henderson dead, saving Katrina. Afterward, David confronted the governor, accusing him of being behind everything that Henderson killed to protect him. The governor denied it, claiming there was no evidence he had ordered anything. Perhaps Henderson acted alone out of loyalty, he suggested. He also denied killing Kyle. David warned him that he would leave him alone only if he promised not to harm Katrina. The governor grew furious, saying David had no authority to make deals and threatened to kill him if he spoke out. David countered with his own threat: "If you even think about hurting Katrina again, I'll release the photos for everyone to see." Elsewhere, Katrina prepared to go out with Matt, but froze when she saw photos of herself with several politicians displayed before her. Shocked and trembling, she demanded to know where Matt got them. Calmly, Matt revealed he had taken them from Kyle the day before killing him. Katrina was horrified as Matt admitted he was Kyle's murderer, explaining he had no choice. Kyle was blackmailing him with the photos, and he would never allow anyone to destroy his life. He then leaned close to her and said chillingly, "Next time we're together, introduce me to Jade. She must be better than Katrina." He walked out, leaving Katrina sobbing in shock, devastated that her secret had been exposed, her true identity as Jade now revealed. The film ended on this scene.